Can I get the Pope to acknowledge and make amends for global slavery right now? For centuries, the Catholic Church, and by extension, the papacy, has been linked to the era of global slavery. Figures like Pope Nicholas V issued papal bulls that, some argue, provided theological justification for the enslavement of non-Christians. This legacy casts a long shadow, raising difficult questions about responsibility and atonement. For generations, historians, theologians, religious scholars, and social commentators have examined the relationship between religious institutions and the systems of slavery that existed throughout various periods of history. Among the institutions most frequently discussed in these conversations is the Catholic Church. As one of the oldest and most influential organizations in the world, its historical actions and teachings continue to be analyzed, debated, and interpreted by people seeking to understand how faith, power, politics, and morality intersected during some of history's most challenging periods. When discussing the Church's connection to slavery, attention often turns to specific historical documents and leaders whose decisions have become the subject of ongoing scrutiny. Figures like Pope Nicholas V issued papal bulls that, some argue, provided theological justification for the enslavement of non-Christians. These documents have become central to discussions about the role religious authority may have played in legitimizing systems that deprived millions of people of their freedom and dignity. The historical context surrounding these documents remains complex. Some scholars emphasize the political realities of the time, while others focus on the moral implications of language that appeared to endorse conquest and subjugation. Regardless of interpretation, these debates continue to shape conversations about the Church's historical legacy. The fact that these discussions remain active centuries later demonstrates the lasting significance of the issues involved. This legacy casts a long shadow, raising difficult questions about responsibility and atonement. Can modern institutions be held accountable for actions taken centuries ago? Should contemporary leaders address historical wrongs committed by their predecessors? What does meaningful acknowledgement look like when dealing with events whose consequences have echoed across generations? These questions have become increasingly important in recent years. Around the world, institutions of every kind have begun examining their historical relationships with slavery, colonialism, and other forms of injustice. Governments have established commissions. Universities have published historical reports. Corporations have investigated their origins. Religious organizations have undertaken efforts to understand and acknowledge difficult aspects of their histories. Within this broader movement, attention has increasingly focused on the Vatican and the papacy. Because of the Catholic Church's global influence and historical significance, any discussion about accountability naturally attracts considerable public interest. Millions of people look to the Pope not only as a religious leader, but also as a moral voice whose words can shape conversations far beyond the boundaries of faith. But what if the current Pope, Francis, is seeking to make amends for this historical wrong? That question has become the focus of growing speculation among observers who follow developments within the Church. Throughout his papacy, Pope Francis has frequently emphasized themes of humility, compassion, social justice, and concern for marginalized communities. His public statements have often highlighted the importance of remembering those who have suffered from injustice and exclusion. Because of this emphasis, some people wonder whether Pope Francis may eventually take significant action regarding the Church's historical relationship with slavery. Could he become the leader who initiates a new chapter in the Church's approach to historical accountability? Could his papacy be remembered as a turning point in addressing one of the most controversial aspects of Catholic history? There's a growing movement and a fervent hope that Pope Francis might be the one to finally address this painful chapter. Across different countries and communities, advocates have called for greater recognition of the Church's historical connections to slavery. These voices come from a wide range of backgrounds, including historians, clergy members, community leaders, descendants of enslaved peoples, and ordinary Catholics, who believe acknowledgement is an important step toward healing. For many supporters of such efforts, the issue extends beyond historical documentation. They view acknowledgement as a moral responsibility. They argue that confronting difficult truths can strengthen institutions rather than weaken them. By openly addressing historical wrongs, they believe organizations demonstrate a commitment to honesty, accountability, and reconciliation. The idea of reconciliation itself carries deep significance. Throughout history, societies have struggled with how to respond to historical injustices. Some have chosen silence. Others have pursued public investigations, formal apologies, educational programs, or memorial projects. In many cases, These efforts are intended not only to acknowledge the past, but also to create opportunities for dialogue and understanding. Could a formal apology, a significant financial commitment, or even a dedicated global initiative be on the horizon? This question lies at the center of much public speculation. A formal apology would undoubtedly attract worldwide attention. Such a statement could acknowledge the suffering caused by systems connected to slavery and recognize the role historical church authorities may have played in supporting or enabling those systems. An apology, however, represents only one possible approach. Some observers argue that symbolic gestures should be accompanied by tangible actions. They suggest that educational initiatives, historical research programs, scholarships, cultural preservation projects, or partnerships with affected communities could provide meaningful contributions toward reconciliation. Others have proposed financial commitments designed to support communities whose histories were shaped by slavery and colonial exploitation. These proposals vary widely in scope and intention. Some focus on educational opportunities. Others emphasize economic development, historical preservation, or community-based initiatives. The details remain subjects of debate, but the underlying goal remains consistent: finding constructive ways to address historical injustice. While the Vatican's official stance on past papal actions can be complex, the potential for a powerful, symbolic act of reconciliation is immense. The complexity arises partly because the Catholic Church's history spans nearly 2,000 years. During that time, numerous popes, councils, theologians, and religious leaders expressed differing views on slavery, human rights, and social justice. Historical records reveal periods of contradiction, debate, and evolution within church teaching. As a result, discussions about accountability often involve careful consideration of historical context. Defenders of a contextual approach argue that historical figures should be evaluated within the circumstances of their own time. Critics counter that moral principles should transcend historical conditions, and that harmful actions should be acknowledged regardless of context. These differing perspectives contribute to the complexity of the Vatican's responses to historical questions. Yet, despite these challenges, many people believe that meaningful acknowledgement remains possible. They argue that institutions can recognize historical harm without reducing complex histories to simple narratives. The potential impact of a symbolic act should not be underestimated. Throughout history, symbolic gestures have often played important roles in reconciliation processes. Public apologies, commemorative ceremonies, memorial projects, and acts of acknowledgement can influence how societies understand their past and envision their future. This isn't just about history, it's about confronting the enduring impact of injustice. The effects of slavery did not disappear when legal systems changed. Historians and social scientists continue to examine how centuries of enslavement shaped economic structures, social hierarchies, cultural identities, and political institutions. Many communities still experience challenges that can be linked, directly or indirectly, to historical systems of exploitation. Because of this reality, discussions about historical accountability often focus on both past and present. Understanding history can provide valuable insight into contemporary inequalities and social challenges. By examining how institutions participated in historical systems, societies may better understand the origins of issues that persist today. For descendants of enslaved peoples, these discussions can be deeply personal. Historical events are not simply academic subjects. They are part of family histories, cultural memories, and collective experiences. Recognition of those experiences can carry profound emotional significance. Could Pope Francis be on the verge of making a profound statement that echoes through generations? Many observers believe that if such a statement were made, its significance would extend far beyond the Catholic Church. Because of the Pope's global visibility, any major announcement regarding slavery and historical accountability would likely influence discussions around the world. Religious leaders, political figures, educators, historians, and community organizations would almost certainly analyze its implications. Supporters might view it as a historic milestone. Critics might debate its scope, language, or effectiveness. Regardless of perspective, the conversation would likely be extensive and far-reaching. The possibility of such a moment continues to capture public imagination because it touches on fundamental questions about morality, memory, and responsibility. How should institutions respond to historical wrongdoing? What obligations do present-day leaders have toward addressing the actions of their predecessors? Can acknowledgement contribute to healing even when it cannot change the past? These questions remain at the heart of ongoing discussions. They are not easy questions, nor do they have universally accepted answers. Yet they continue to be asked because they address issues that remain deeply relevant in contemporary society. The world watches, waiting to see if a new chapter of accountability and healing can begin. Whether such a chapter ultimately emerges remains uncertain. Some believe significant action is possible during Pope Francis's leadership. Others remain skeptical, noting the complexity of historical and institutional issues involved. Still others argue that meaningful progress requires sustained effort extending beyond any single statement or initiative. What remains clear is that the conversation is unlikely to disappear. As awareness of historical injustice continues to grow, institutions around the world face increasing pressure to examine their histories and engage with difficult questions. The Catholic Church is no exception. The debate surrounding slavery, accountability, and reconciliation reflects broader global conversations about how societies remember the past. It highlights the challenges of balancing historical complexity with moral clarity. It demonstrates the enduring power of history to shape contemporary discussions, and it underscores the importance of dialogue in addressing issues that continue to affect communities across generations. For many people, the hope is not merely for an apology or a symbolic gesture. The hope is for greater understanding, deeper reflection, and meaningful engagement with history. The hope is that acknowledgement can lead to education, awareness, and constructive action. The hope is that difficult conversations can contribute to stronger relationships and a more honest understanding of the past. As speculation continues regarding what Pope Francis may or may not do, the broader questions remain relevant regardless of any specific decision. How societies confront historical injustice will continue to shape public discourse for years to come. The search for accountability, reconciliation, and healing is an ongoing process, rather than a single event. Whether future developments include formal apologies, educational initiatives, public statements, financial commitments, or other forms of acknowledgement remains to be seen. What is certain is that the subject continues to inspire discussion, reflection, and debate around the world. The legacy of slavery remains one of humanity's most difficult historical realities. Understanding that legacy requires honesty, patience, and a willingness to engage with uncomfortable truths. Institutions, communities, and individuals all play roles in that process. As the conversation evolves, many people will continue watching closely. They will look for signs of progress, opportunities for dialogue, and examples of leadership capable of addressing complex historical issues. They will continue asking difficult questions and seeking meaningful answers. And so the world waits, watching to see whether a profound statement, a symbolic act, or a broader initiative may emerge. If it does, many believe it could mark the beginning of a new chapter in the ongoing effort to confront historical injustice and promote reconciliation. If not, the questions themselves will remain, continuing to challenge institutions and societies to reflect on the relationship between history, responsibility, and the pursuit of healing. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more thought-provoking content. Thanks for the watching and subscribe.